Hi, I'm M.
And my name is Bea.
And this is
Fangirls Anonymous. A quick warning, this podcast is not for kids.
We get into some pretty explicit stuff.
But if you're still with us and into that, welcome.
Well, hello, it is the final episode of Season 1.
Yeah, and we are both saddened and excited by this end of season because, hey, it means that we get to make more stuff next season, but also this, our first season, gone forever.
We will never be making a first season episode again. It's kind of sad, but it feels like we've accomplished something.
We can only go upwards from here.
Literally, though, like, I hope people in the future will look back and be like, aw, their first episodes of their first season were so quaint. Because that's how I experience podcasts now. So I know I probably should have talked about there being an end to the season before this episode, but surprise, this is the last episode before January 1st, 2022. That doesn't sound like a real year, and yet it's coming up quick, people. Yeah, it's a little bit weird, man. Wasn't it 2020 like 4 days ago?
I hope not. 2020 was not a good year.
No, it wasn't. It didn't feel like it existed, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, today we're doing something really exciting. We are
super special.
Interviewing... Yeah, super duper special. She's a very special person. We are interviewing our editor, Quinn McCoy. Everybody give a large round of applause. Quinn, welcome!
Hello!
Everybody, you're hearing a different voice, and it's the editor who makes everything we say sound good.
Mm-hmm. So basically, if you think we're any good at all, it's her. She did it.
She's the one. We worship her in this little church of ours.
this little church of fangirls.
We are fangirls. We are Fangirls Anonymous. Hi, Quinn.
Hi, M. Hi, Bea.
Oh, man. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous, but Fangirls Anonymous. Oh, my God. I just got that connection, and it's the last episode.
Really? Because that's immediately, like, that's what I think of every time I see the name.
It was there at the recesses and edges of my brain, and it was only until now that I grabbed it and comprehended it. So, Quinn, who are you?
Let's get into the really
day.
Deep philosophical things first, right off the bat.
I mean, are we here? Are we real? Are we human?
I think yes to all of those, but maybe. I don't know.
No, we are dancer, obviously.
we love that reference.
Oh my gosh. No, but who are you, man?
So I am but a tiny 5 foot tall human being.
Glad we clarified.
And basically editing the podcast is just a small part of who I am. When I'm not editing the podcast, I am working at a bookstore, or I'm watching Titanic for the 1000th time, or I'm sitting with my cat wishing that he could talk. His name is Marty.
Is he a little whippersnapper?
Oh, he is a little whippersnapper. He is a black cat, so he makes me feel kind of like a witch. He's sleeping right now, and I was kind of afraid when I was recording this that he would be causing a ruckus, because he does like to do that.
We have dealt with many cats causing a ruckus on this podcast. You would not be the first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bea, you have a bunch of cats.
Yeah, and they are exiled from the recording studio, except for when they break in because they are tiny thieves in the night. And then they have to sit there quietly or they get booted. This doesn't usually end well for either of us.
For me, I have a dog, which you might have heard on the recording. She is barking her little tail off right now. And she's black and white, and her name is Kiki. And Kiki is after Kiki's delivery service. Pets. We all have pets, which is kind of nice.
Pets, am I right?
But yeah, okay, so I kind of wanted to get into how you are the editor of a fan fiction podcast, and yet you have not read a single fic.
It's
ever.
true. It's very true. I have never read any fan fiction. I didn't even really know what it was before I started this endeavor. So
You didn't know what it was before you met me.
and I probably wouldn't have. It just was not in my, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Wheelhouse?
Sure.
It wasn't in your orbit.
Yeah, it was not in my orbit.
Yeah, I bring people into the fold, apparently. That's just who I am when it comes to fanfiction. Do you want to get into how we met, actually, Quinn?
Yes.
Okay.
So Em and I worked together.
At the bookstore that Quinn
Yes.
just talked about.
You were there before me.
Only for a little bit. I didn't work there
yeah.
for very long.
And we didn't really get a chance to like have any real conversations besides just like passing like, hey, how are you, whatever. And
Welcome to
then
the club.
yeah. And then one day there was just a moment where there were no customers and we could like exchange some words finally. And we got talking about like what we went to school for and whatever, stuff like that.
And like our interests and stuff.
Yeah.
So we were, I remember this. We were looking through these discarded bins of books, and there was a Titanic book in there. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And Quinn, you were like, oh, I love the Titanic. Do you love the Titanic? And I'm like, yes. And you were like, oh, I love the movie. I'm like, I love the movie too. And then you were like, I have a teacup set from the Titanic. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And we just got talking about Titanic. And then I brought up Titanic AUs, and you were like, what's a Titanic AU? And then
like,
the rest is history.
Yeah, but then even before that, one of the first things I mentioned to you about myself was that I had always wanted to work on a podcast.
That's right.
Or just like be involved in audio production somehow.
Yeah, you used to work at a radio, right?
Yeah, I did. I worked at a radio station, and that was
Doing
just so
commercials.
much fun.
You worked on
Yeah.
commercials for them. Yeah, that's very cool. And I think that really corresponds to how well you are. Like, you are so good at editing. Like, it's so,
Thank you.
it's so, you go in with a fine-tooth comb. And that's why we sound so good. So thank you.
Yeah.
We really do owe you.
Yeah, everything.
It's so funny how things just come full circle, because I think like if I didn't ever do what I did at the radio station, I don't know, just one thing leads to the next. And
Absolutely.
here we are.
Luckily, I was working at the same bookstore as you, and we found each other.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have your phone number, and I had to leave the bookstore. I got really sick. I'm still recovering from it, actually. But yeah, I had to go through multiple weird channels in order to get your contact information. And finally, I was able to ask you to do this podcast that I had the idea of. I was thinking maybe we could talk about why we basically have a podcast about fanfiction.
I mean, besides the obvious, which is that we like fandom and fanfiction, and we would like to talk about it.
I guess that's good that you like what you're talking about.
We could bump it up to love, maybe, a little bit. We love fandom.
So it's getting serious.
We're not into the possibility of marrying it yet, but we do love it. Yes. You know, Bea, you and I definitely thought about, like, in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do a podcast with you. Because we just were able to, like, speak to each other so efficiently and eloquently and quickly, and it just worked. And then I got really sick, and I had a lot of time to think. And I was watching The Mandalorian with my family, and then for some reason my brain connected the dots that it needed to connect, where I was thinking about fanfiction, and I was thinking about, suddenly my brain was like, oh yeah, that's right, you wanted to do a podcast with Bea someday. And then it was like, fanfiction podcast with Bea. And then I texted you and you were like, yep, let's do it.
I mean, a flash of lightning came as Im texting me and going, would you like to do a fanfiction podcast? And me going, yeah, okay, sure, that's within my skill set. I think that sounds fun.
You weren't, like, super excited about it. You were just like, yeah, okay.
All of my excitement is kept inside of my chest, where someday it will probably explode in a supernova of light. But, you know, for right now it just lives here.
I relate to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was too sick to be outwardly excited when I was texting you that, but yes, on the inside I was just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, this might be happening. I might actually happen. So I'm so happy that it has happened. It's amazing. I also kind of wanted to get into like why we decided to be anonymous, because M and Bea are not our real names. If anybody doesn't know that, I mean, now you know. We were trying to follow the value system of what fandom culture is. What do you think, Bea?
I think a lot of it is twofold. One, on the one hand, yeah, there is a certain cultural value within fandom for just having sort of a persona in place, so that you can go forth and do things like write your terrible, terrible smut, and there isn't going to be this social backlash if, you know, your great-grandma Googles the wrong thing and comes upon it, because she's never going to know it's you. If your boss Googles your name, it's not going to come up and attach you to it, which has some pretty direct correlation to this. But on the other hand, there's also something kind of nice of being able to meet anybody that we interview on a level that they can also feel comfortable with, and some of our viewers maybe, because when we interview people, a lot of times we are going to know them by their fandom pseudonyms, and it's a little weird to be like, hi, I'm official person with real people name. Can I talk to, you know, Murther 1000?
Yeah. It is a little bit strange, but also, I have actually never seen a podcast with anonymous hosts. Ever. At least I don't think I have.
That you know of. Maybe they're sneaky.
Exactly, that we know of. Yeah, we don't know if they're pseudonyms or not. What do you think about it, Quinn? Well, about us being anonymous.
I think it adds a level of mystery to the podcast that is nice. Because normally, at least with the podcast that I listen to, the focus is sort of on the host and who they are. And I feel like this is one where it's not really about you both and your identities, but it's just you two talking about things that you like anonymously, hence the name.
So there are YouTube channels that are like Food Wishes on YouTube. He never shows his face. It's all him making delicious looking food, and he never shows his face in any of the videos. And we are the Food Wishes of podcasting regarding fanfiction. That's amazing. That makes me feel so happy, because I really respect that guy.
That reminds me, there's a YouTuber, I forget what her name is, but she runs like a makeup YouTube channel, but you never see her face. She reviews makeup, but it's all just kind of like spreading all of the products out and just talking about them and swatching them on her hand. So you never see her. I just thought that was really interesting.
Send me the link of that when we're done with this, so I can put it in the show notes. I'll also be putting Food Wishes down there as well. So I just kind of wanted to also say that we have this little inside joke in this podcast, where I am Kirk of this little trio, and Bea, you are definitely Spock, and Quinn, you are absolutely McCoy. And it also really works because your last name is McCoy.
Yes.
Oh, it makes me so happy. But our personalities absolutely fit with those three, so.
I actually don't really know a whole lot about Star Trek, but I did take a quiz one time, you know, one of those BuzzFeed quizzes that you do.
Yes.
And it was like, what Star Trek character are you? And of course I got McCoy. What's his name? Bones?
Bones. Yeah.
Bones. That is so
of course
metal.
He got Bones.
I love it.
He's a freaking doctor. His name's Bones. I would not feel comfortable.
Dr. Bones.
Technically his first name is Leonard, and Bones is just a nickname. It makes one wonder who on the ship had the balls to walk up to this man and go, Bones, that's your name now.
You have to know it's Kirk. It's absolutely Kirk who did that. Kirk is just smart and stupid enough to do that. I think it works. I think it works within this little trio. Okay, so Bea, how did you and I become friends? I want to know your perspective on this.
So a long time ago in a galaxy far away, we went to college. We happened to, in this galaxy, be in the same college, which is good because otherwise we never would have met. It would have been really awkward. So we happened to be in the same class at the same college, which is how we met.
And in the same program, I have to remind you. The same program.
As you do in college, we all sort of were shuffling about our lives, going to class, staring blankly at the teachers I lectured, and, you know, generally not interacting with one's peers that you didn't already know by the time you're 3 years into college, because you just don't have energy inside of yourself anymore. You're dead. Yep. Anyway, so I, in my infinite glory, am sitting there quietly writing away at my very own Stucky fic, which, no, you will never get to read. And leans over and goes, hey, is is that Stucky? And I quickly look up and around like a meerkat because these are forbidden waters. You're in the middle of a college class and you know the walls have ears. And I go, yes, maybe we'll talk after class.
Wow.
I have to defend myself a little bit. I wasn't just randomly reading Bea's, like, writing, okay? I don't do that. But I love fountain pens. Like, fountain pens and cursive are just, it's one of my main hobbies. I have a lot of hobbies, but, like, I love the act of writing itself. And you have some of the most beautiful cursive script I've ever seen. And it was just amazing to, like, see somebody in college, in class, ostensibly writing notes.
Nope.
In this beautiful cursive script. And I caught the words Steve and Bucky in what you were writing. Just, like, randomly. I wasn't actually reading through it. I just caught the word Steve and Bucky. Luckily I did, because that's when I decided to, like, ask you if that was Stucky fanfic. And I will also say that class was completely full. There were no empty seats in that class on the first day. And
yeah, and it was one of the classes where, like, they've clearly shoved an extra row in the back to fit everybody into, so it wasn't like a normal distance away either. It was like, let's see how many students
everybody
we can physically
was close to each other. I had a class right before that class, 10 minutes before that class, in a building that was down a giant hill. Okay, it took forever to get up to where the class was that we met. So the first day, I always try and get the front row of seats, and luckily, there was only one seat left open in the front row next to you. Every other seat was taken except for the one right next to you, and you were on the inside, so you were next to a wall, so the only seat next to you was open. And I thank my lucky stars that everybody else in that class decided to not sit next to you so that I could sit next to you so that this podcast could be a thing. Because after that, once we realized that we both love fan fiction, we became friends. Anyway, we were very lucky that day. And the same thing with Quinn and I. And you and Quinn, you and I.
Yes. Yes.
It's amazing what little tiny things in a life can change.
Moments of serendipity.
Anyway, absolutely. Fun fact about Bea and I. This is not the first podcast we have ever done with each other. So we had another class. We had like 3 classes together that whole year. So our second semester, senior year, we had 2 classes together, same semester, which we had no idea that was going to happen. We just ended up taking the same classes at the same time. And we both got English degrees, by the way. I'll just say that because the final project for our English degrees involved like a class that you had to take. And wasn't it like Rhetoric of the Wilderness?
It was
pretty sure that's what
Wilderness Literature and something. It was a capstone. The important part was that it was an English capstone, which basically means that English teachers get to decide whoever's teaching gets to sort of gear it towards whatever their interests are, and then there's a couple of criteria that they have to meet as far as projects and stuff.
Yeah, so the person who was our professor was really interested in the wild at that point in her career. And I love Bigfoot. Bigfoot has always kind of been part of like my family a little bit. We talk about Bigfoot. We were in an area in the world in which Bigfoot was kind of part of the social fabric a little bit, I would say. So the final project that we had to do for that class was basically create something regarding wilderness and rhetoric itself. And I was originally going to do this podcast idea that I had with my friend Shayla, but she decided to instead give me a candle that she painted a Bigfoot on as a way of saying, I'm sorry, I don't want to, but here's a candle with a Bigfoot on it, and I still have it.
It's a pretty good consolation prize.
Oh, absolutely. I love that thing. I'm never giving that thing away. Shayla Bailey, thank you so much. But basically, she said no, and I was like, that's okay, man. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw Bea, and I was like, oh my god, Bea, I think would say yes to this if I couch it the right way. And so I walked up to Bea, and I was like, hey, do you want to...
Very casual, exactly like that.
Yep, that's exactly what I did. Hey man, do you want to partner with me on this final project and do a podcast about Bigfoot? And then you looked at me, and I was really worried you were going to say no. You looked at me, and you were like, yes, that emphatically. And I was so happy that you were so excited to do it, because you're not like the most emotive person in the world. So I've never seen you that emphatic before in my life, before or since. Anyway,
like I said, I keep all of my excitement inside of my chest.
You said yes, and then right behind me was the teacher. And I was like, is that okay? And she was just like, yeah, man, that's totally cool. Like, she was excited for us. She seemed excited for us.
The prof was actually pretty excited because she was doing some of her own work on oral histories and things, so the idea of a podcast was really exciting to her. But
yes. So we ended up doing 2 episodes for that quote-unquote podcast. One about the science of Bigfoot and one about the myth. And I took the myth part and you took the science part, obviously. And we had no idea what we were doing at all. It is not anywhere on the internet, I don't think.
Nope.
Man.
We had no idea what we were doing. We still kind of don't know what we're doing, but we know a little bit more about what we don't know. And I think we did a pretty good job for it being our first thing ever. Because it was also your first time ever podcasting, right?
Very much.
Yeah, it was mine too. I had listened to a lot of podcasts, and you had too. We decided to call it We've Wandered from the Topic.
If you haven't noticed already, we occasionally get sidetracked by tangents.
And we tended to do that just in our normal conversation anyway. So we thought, wouldn't it be fun to do that? And we said in our presentation for that project, I said, also quite emphatically, someday Bea and I are going to do a podcast. And it felt like I was signing a contract. Like, it felt like a momentous occasion when I said that. Like, the truth of that sentence, like, could be felt. So, yeah, it happened. And I'm very happy that it happened. So, that's how we got started, which is kind of funny. It was a weird little Bigfoot podcast.
As far as where we want to go next with this whole shebang is, we of course are going to come back for another season. We're going to be continuing on with some of sort of our little, I guess, series that we've been doing. We're going to talk about tropes and ships and, you know, things that anybody, if you send something in and you want us to talk about it, we will definitely take that into consideration. We would love to hear from all our audience on what you think we should talk about next, because there is just so much to fandom. We're going to talk about...
If you want to email us, it is at mmbpresents@gmail.com. It'll be in the show notes. Contact us if you like.
We are also planning on... We are very excited about some of the next topics that we're heading on to, because we've sort of been waiting since the beginning, because we were like, oh, we need to get the people who know what we're talking about and have stuck with us this long before we can get there. We're going to be talking about things that are, got a little bit more meat to them, I guess, in some ways. Like, we're going to talk about Mary Sue's, and that is a can of worms.
It really is. And also we were thinking about doing a series on ABO.
There's going to be a lot there to dig into.
Gosh.
We are hoping to get some more people to interview about various topics. We're excited to learn more about not necessarily just the fic or the fan art sides of fandom. We want to sort of branch out and see what other skills and crafts people bring in that they use to enjoy shows.
We also we had an idea of maybe starting a fic club where we have a fic that we really like, and we want, if we get enough people contacting us through our email, then we could start this fic club where we have people send in their opinions on a fic that we talk about at the beginning of one episode, and then have people send in opinions, and we can talk about and have a discussion about that fic for an episode. We thought that would be pretty fun. We're thinking about doing a writers series, interviewing specific writers of fandom and maybe artists and all that jazz, getting into different types of episodes or different types of fandom art. Yeah, it's we're going to be doing a lot of different stuff in subsequent seasons.
We're going to be branching out and trying new things, and you know, we love interacting with our audience. So if anybody has any kind of ideas about things they'd like to see or things that you just think would be a good idea to talk about, we really, really do want people to participate and to bring ideas and thoughts back to us.
Absolutely. We feel very privileged to be able to have a microphone and to talk to people who want to listen to us speak. So thank you to everybody who listens to us. Quinn, do you want to say anything?
I've just been listening to you guys talk and just kind of taking it all in. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh, yeah.
About, I don't know, editing the podcast.
So it takes quite a while, right? You've said in the past.
It does. It takes longer than you would think, considering like what you were saying about it kind of being like me looking at it with like a fine-tooth comb. It does feel like that, and I think as a person I'm very meticulous, and
yes,
you kind of have to be when you're doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, a bad editor is somebody who just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Just in anything that gets edited. You are not that. You are a good editor. You're a great editor. So even though you're not involved in fandom in almost any way,
no, in like no way besides this podcast.
you are the editor of its premiere podcast.
Yes. Oh man, I love it. I love it.
So you do have maybe a pinky toe into the pool of fandom in that way, but as somebody who is not really part of its community at all, you put a lot of effort into it without anybody noticing. And I think that that's kind of the main reason why we wanted to talk to you, not just because you're really interesting and just because you're really funny and because, I don't know, we thought it'd be cool to have you on to talk personally about it, but like you deserve the recognition just as much as we do, if not more.
Oh. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm gonna cry on this podcast.
Well, you would be the first, but I highly doubt that you'll be the only. Editing is such an unsung hero position, in my opinion, when it comes to media. So thank you so much.
I didn't
so much.
even really know that until, well, I didn't mention this earlier, but I went to school for digital media production, which exposed me to how people make films and commercials for the radio and like everything like that.
Yeah.
The editing that goes into it is just like crazy. Like I never even thought about that before, but it's true.
Now you're intimately aware.
Yes. Very much aware.
Yeah, I feel so lucky as a human being to have had that conversation with you about Titanic and its little teacups. And then to ultimately become really good friends with you.
Yeah, and we only lived like in the same area for such a short amount of time.
So short. We hung out so often in that short amount of time.
I know, like this past summer was like the M summer. Like I feel like we had to condense our like Waffle House hangs into
oh my god, I know.
Like a couple
now people
weeks.
are gonna have like a semblance of awareness of where we were.
Yeah.
Because Waffle House.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. I also consider it the Quinn summer in my head when I think of summer of 2021, and it was so fun to hang out with you.
I think it's worth mentioning that M allowed me to experience Waffle House for the first time ever.
Yeah, I introduced you to Waffle House.
Yes.
Bea, have you ever been to a Waffle House?
Nope.
Oh boy. I'm just spitballing here, but I've always wanted to do a Fangirls Anonymous cross-country road trip where we go around the country interviewing people for the podcast, like have that all set up beforehand, but then like I don't know, we could do like an audio vlog. That would be so fun, and we would introduce you to friggin' Waffle House. Bea.
Oh man, let me tell you, I lived in the South for 3 years prior to experiencing Waffle House.
Which I'm flabbergasted by still.
Yeah, I don't know how I never experienced it, but I will say my expectations were non-existent. So when I sat down and I had that waffle for the first time, it may as well have been the best waffle that I've ever had because I had no expectations. And I think that's how you have to go into it.
It made me so happy to see you excited about that waffle and enjoy the hell out of it because, like, my parents were there for me when I first had my first waffle. It felt like you were, like, a little duckling coming into the world of Waffle House. I actually can't wait to see Bea have the same experience.
That's one thing about when I do eventually move back north to my home state. My sweet New York. There's no Waffle House. I'm kind of gonna miss it.
So what you need to do is go to a Waffle House, and I think for $5 you can get one of their coffee mugs, and you will always remember the delicious waffles if you have a coffee mug. I have 2 of them. I keep my toothbrush in one of them, so I always remember the sweet, beautiful taste of those waffles.
We're hyping it up so much.
No, it's worth it. It's worthy of the hype, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Quinn, thank you so much for not only being our editor, but also being willing to come on the show for a little bit.
Thank you. Can I just
that you're
say...
going to be editing later.
Yeah. It's going to be weird for sure, editing my own voice.
I bet. I've gotten used to the whole listening to my own voice, because I listen to every episode, obviously.
Yeah, see, that's so funny because, like, first of all, I just want to say that I have wanted to be on a podcast for so long. And like now I'm realizing the dream, and it's very cool. So thank you for that opportunity. But also, yeah, I've never really edited my voice. I've streamed on Twitch before, which I think the link to that channel, that dusty channel that is so inactive, but I want to bring it back. But when I stream, I don't watch my streams after I am done with them because I just don't want to.
Yeah, we will figure out a way to get you back on this podcast. It doesn't necessarily just have to end with this lore episode about this show. But yeah, eventually you'll be back on and you'll get to further on your continued dream of being on podcasts. It's very exciting. There might even be a podcast about editors that you could petition to be on. I know that people like getting guests for things like us. Yeah.
Or maybe somebody is listening to this and has a Titanic podcast that they want to, have me chat.
You should just make one yourself, really.
I should just make one. What am I waiting for?
Oh, man. You can use that book of astrology that I gave you.
Oh, that book is incredible. That's another, I feel like that was another level up in our friendship.
Oh, I was just about to say that. Yes. Like, that felt like a turning point where I was like, oh yeah, I have this book that I don't read. Yeah, I know you'll enjoy it way more because two of your favorite things in the entire world are the disaster of the Titanic and astrology.
Yes, and I would have never thought that there's a book that exists that combines those two things.
I found it in a random secondhand bookstore, and there's like a signature in it from the author. Yeah. And I don't think it was it's not a largely well-known book. It's like one of those, I found it in the Wiccan section.
Love that, yeah.
Of this store. And it's not, people just don't know. I just don't think it's like it was a big book. So I'm very happy that I was able to find it on the west coast of the United States and then move to Tennessee and then meet you and then give it to you. Because you needed it. It wasn't going to get over there by itself. It needed me to move it across.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you very much for being on here. We are super duper excited for season 2. We do have a Patreon. If you want to be a member of that Patreon, go ahead. If you don't want to, please, by all means, don't. But yeah, that exists. Anyway,
I want to add too that even if you're not a Patreon member, even just like sharing this podcast with your friends, just talking about it helps.
Thank you, Quinn, for saying that because it's really hard for me to say that stuff, if anybody can tell. I've never liked advertising, and I hate advertising for stuff that I make. So thanks, Quinn.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, well, I think that we're done with interviewing you. That was super fun. Thank you so much for being on here with us.
Yeah, this was so fun.
You know what that means, though.
Oh boy. Rec Corner! So we actually decided to do a Rec Corner. But instead of doing a fan fiction Rec Corner this week, we decided to do something that is a little bit more to Quinn's taste. Quinn obviously doesn't read any fic, so she wouldn't be able to give a rec. But instead, we've all decided to give our own favorite albums because Quinn is an audiophile.
Yes. I love
Quinn, how much do you love music?
Oh, let me tell you, I just love
Let me count the ways.
The first time actually that M came into my apartment, I kind of gave her a warning beforehand, and I was like, listen, you will understand within 5 seconds of being in this apartment that I just really appreciate music. I'm not a musician by any means. I just appreciate listening to it. Right when you walk into my apartment, there's my gigantic record collection, and pretty much everything on my walls is like a different concert poster or like a band.
And the only thing that isn't is a Titanic poster.
Yeah, that's the only thing. The only thing.
Oh, it makes me so happy.
So it's just kind
and
of
it's like
flimsy.
boxed too. It's like framed and everything.
Yeah.
It's not like a college Titanic poster, college dorm room Titanic poster.
Yeah.
So, well, how about let's save yours for last.
Okay.
I'll go first. My favorite album in the whole world that I could listen to every song and never skip is my Jim Croce's Greatest Hits album. Jim Croce is just one of the best singer-songwriters that has ever lived. If you don't know about him, please do yourself a favor and go listen to Time in a Bottle or New York Is Not My Home or Operator. Oh man, all great songs. His music is so good. Yeah, that's about it. There's a reason why this isn't a music podcast, but these are our favorites, I think, right now. What is your favorite album?
So I really, really enjoy an artist known as Rhiannon Giddens, and so I'm going to rec her album Freedom Highway, which has several different songs that I really enjoy. She's African American, and she does traditional songs and original compositions in the style of like old Southern slave songs, but she's also got a good grounding in Irish folk songs, so she does a little of column A and a little of column B and has an amazing voice. So definitely go and look her up on YouTube. It's 100% worth it.
Man, you've piqued my interest with freaking Rhiannon Giddens. That's so cool. Quinn, what is your favorite?
So at first I had one album, but I snuck another one in there. I just needed to talk about two. One that I have been listening to a lot recently is an album called Screen Violence by a band called CHVRCHES, but that's CHVRCHES with a V instead of a U. They are a Scottish synth pop band, and that album, it just came out a couple months ago, and I have been listening to it nonstop. It's one album where I just don't skip any songs. It has music that makes you want to dance, but lyrics that make you want to cry. I love that combination, which also leads into the second album that I have recommended, which is Hayley Williams, her solo album, Petals for Armor. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Paramore, but it's Hayley's solo album, and it is very different from anything that Paramore has done, and I like it because it's 15 songs, and they all sort of go through the spectrum of human emotion. At least to me, listening to it, that's what I think of, because it starts out with songs about anger and just like grief, and then as the album progresses, it ends with songs about acceptance and love and confidence. I just think that it's really cool, and that is my second recommendation.
Well, you should do a podcast about music. Thank you so much for wrecking that, and thank you so much for being on the final episode of season 1. This has been such a journey.
Such a journey. It's coming to an end. What?
Oh man, and it all started senior year of our college experience, Bea. Well, I guess we're done.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see y'all next year on
Fangirls Anonymous. Bye!